Sofia Bacchini, the theater stage as a place of political activation during the Global Sixties, Dario and Franca, yes, experience with Palestinian residents. So, Sofia Bacchini graduated in contemporary history from the University of Modena. She is currently PhD candidate, international studies at the University of Napoli. Bacchini ongoing doctorate project is related to the present Palestinian political organization in Italy from the 70s to the Oslo Accord and their transnational network. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Can we see the slide in the beginning? Thank you. So, thank you very much to al-Kalima to invite me to this incredible conference. Thank you to my colleagues, and overall, thank you for resisting to the very end. Thank you, I'm so happy you are still here. So, just a few words. I'm a contemporary and social historian, so my research approach is not only related to, history with the capital H, but above all to stories from below. This is important, and you will see why. And the research that I'm going to present you tells of an experience of encounter and exchange through theater, thinking at the stage as a place also for political activation. And I tried to imagine it as it were a theater script, dividing it into 3 acts. So I hope you will enjoy it. This is just a part of my wider ongoing research. So every question or comments in the Q&A space obviously will be very appreciated. So let's start. No? No? Okay. To start, as a prologue, I would like to recreate a little bit the context of our story, starting first of all with the transnational network. And following the work of Paul Thomas Chamberlain and the more recent research by Olsen and Agbolle, from the 1967 Six-Day War onwards, the Palestinian question became a global issue as the successor of the first generation of the Third World struggles born at the Bandung Conference in 1955, as we can also see from this bulletin of the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee from the United States. And it became global, particularly after 1969, when Yasser Arafat, who we see in this photo with the attributes that would later become iconic, the Tia and the Kalashnikov, became the new president of the PLO, succeeding Ahmad Shukairi and the old generation of Palestinian leaders. As conceptual, linguistic, and iconographic change that can be captured in the formula Palestine the other Vietnam, that was successful all over the world and also in Italy. And I show you there the cover of this special issue of the magazine from the Italian New Left organization Lotta Continua from 1970. And this was a formula that became global also thanks to the transnational networks that the PLO and the other Palestinian political parties and organizations could rely on in those years. Of which I wanted to give an example with this poster realized by the Palestinian artist Ismail Shammoud, that here in al-Kalima you know very well, and we also saw it yesterday in the beautiful intervention of Lan Duong, where the analogy is well represented by the image of the Viet Cong passing the baton of the struggle to the Palestinian Fedayeen. Regarding the Italian local framework, we must consider that since the mid-50s, the Italian government had adopted a series of policies overall towards those countries that were passing through the colonization processes that made Italy a university destination for international students, who often choose this country because the bureaucratic procedures for enrollment at the university and the admission exams were easier, and the cost of living was lower than other European countries at that time. So these students often affiliated themselves into associations according to national provenience. From the mid-60s, an important presence of Palestinian students began to be registered in Italy. And in 1971, they officially founded the Italian section of the General Union of Palestinian Students, GUPS, already founded in the early 50s, and of which Arafat himself became secretary in 1952, and that in 1964 in Cairo defined as an organization affiliated to the PLO. The majority composition within the GUPS was tied to Al-Fatah, but supporters of other parties were also present, in particular in Italy, of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine and of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which then constituted also independent formations, operating also outside the GUPS activities. Let's go to our first act. The political turmoil, I don't know if you can read, but I will tell you. The political turmoil in Italy and in Europe at the time, which would reach its symbolic peak in the French May of 1968, had also involved the world of art and culture, and in particular theater, a place of experimentation par excellence. You can see here at the bottom left, I hope, I don't know your direction, a Roman cantina, which means cellar, that were places where new relationships between the actors and the audience were experimented. Above, you can see a picture of Carmelo Bene, a well-known actor who gave new impetus to the Italian theater at the time. And on the right, you can see a performance by the Living Theatre of New York, a theater company that completely deconstructed and politicized the performance form by declaring the plot is the revolution. Dario and Franca Rame, whom you can see in this scene photo, a couple both in art and in life, were already in those years established artists involved in cinema, television, radio, but known above all for their idea of political theater, which criticized the bourgeois formalities through the revival of the commedia dell'arte, the satire, and the close relationship with current affairs, current political affairs, using raw materials for their performances, which were activated on the stage through the mechanism of the paradox. In the summer 1968, the couple founded the theater collective Nuova Scena in Milan, which means new scene, close to the Italian Communist Party and its network of cultural initiatives, producing during these years some of their most comedies, such as Mistero Buffo, and which allowed their shows to circulate in really popular environments, such as dance halls, schools, or occupied factories. However, the extreme experimental form of their theater and their closeness to the circles of the emerging Italian New Left gradually deteriorated their relations with the Communist Party until the actual break in 1970. In 1970, when Fo and Rame, Dario Fo and Franca Rame, together with other artists, decided to found a new theater collective, La Comune Company. Second part. This sentence that I don't know if you can read is taken from the introduction of the first show produced by La Comune in 1970. The title was Vorrei morire anche stasera se dovessi pensare che non è servito a niente. I'd like to die even tonight if I had to think it was useless. The title was taken from a poem by the Italian poet and partisan Renata Viganò. and the show was dedicated to the Palestinian resistance in the wake of the recent events of Black September in Jordan that had deeply affected Italian public opinion at that time. So the play, divided into two acts, compared the Palestinian resistance with the anti-fascist resistance fought in Italy between 1943 and 1945, an event that in these years was still an important yardstick for elaborating experience of armed struggle outside the national borders. The performance was very well received by the public, and the debates that followed the performances revealed the internal urgency of elaborating among old and new generation of militants the theme of the betrayed resistance in the aftermath of the end of the war. That is, the Communist Party's caging action of the revolutionary trust that had matured during the conflict. The debates in which, however, the specificity of the Palestinian resistance was momentarily set aside. So, during the making of Vorrei morire anche stasera, the collective had established various political relationships, in particular with the supporters in Italy of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, from whom they asked for contacts in Lebanon to go and explore the subject of the Palestinian resistance with real Fedayeen. From this trip and these exchanges, in 1972, finally, Fedayeen was born. And Fedayeen was a show in which 10 real Fedayeen, as we can read also in the poster, who had come to Italy from Beirut with the company, acted, played and sang on the stage together with the actors of La Comune. Unlike the first one, this show focused exclusively on the Palestinian resistance, told through the staging and the translation of Palestinian poems and popular songs, a theme that was very dear to the theater of Dario and Franca Rame, who, through popular culture, intended to show to the audience the deeper essence of the Palestinian history and struggle. The show's tour, from January to March 1972, was a huge success, involving thousands of spectators all over Italy. However, the show triggered a very heated debate, which highlighted the delicate political phase that both Italian and Palestinian political circles were facing in those years. And then we come to our third act. These, maybe you can't read, but are two leaflets distributed during the performances of the Fedayeen show in Milan and Bologna, in which the GUPS Italian section called for a boycott of the show, judged counter-revolutionary, because in their view, it staged the internal contradiction of the Palestinian resistance, thus representing it to the public as divided and weak. In fact, the play referred to the ambiguous position that Al-Fatah had held toward the Jordanian force during the events of Black September, a reading that was certainly influenced by the political proximity of La Comune with the Democratic Front of the Liberation of Palestine. This action on the part of the GUPS was defined by La Comune as provocations that came to us from reactionary Arab groups, and was not only limited to this confrontation. In fact, the debate continued, involving other actors, such as the student movement in Milan, politically close at that time with the GUPS, at the delegation of which in March of that year had met some Al-Fatah leaders in Lebanon, and then expressed in their newspaper, as you can see here, harsh criticism towards the Democratic Front and the Popular Front, accusing them of being minority parties and interpreting Marxism in a too creative or in a too dogmatic manner. In response to this, the Democratic Front of Liberation of Palestine supporters also took a stance through the Italian edition of their newspaper, Asharara, accusing the student movement of uncritically flattering itself to the propaganda position of al-Fatah, and critically the GUPS of adopting right-wing positions, refusing to seriously engage in democratic debates within the Palestinian movement. As a further demonstration of how much the Palestinian issue was an important reference for the Italian public debate in those years, and this is a discovery that I made totally by chance, which is the beautiful side of my work, obviously. In 1972, the same year in which Fedain was staged, another play dedicated to Palestine, to the Palestinian resistance, was staged. The name was Voglio dirvi di un popolo che sfida la morte. I want to tell you about a people defying death. Produced by the Gruppo Teatrale Viaggiante Theatre Company in Bologna. And as Loriano Machiavelli, which was the script writer of the show and who later became a successful writer actually in Italy, he told me in an interview, some members of the company also left for Damascus, where they casually met a Palestinian boy who was studying in Bologna at that time and was on holiday in Syria, and who took them to an al-Fatah training camp. So, with the material collected during this trip, they staged the play, a more dramatic representation than Fedain, and with a more didactic intent, intended to acquaint the public with the Palestinian question, starting the story even from the first Jewish aliyah in Palestine at the end of the 19th century. The play was a good success, although not comparable to Fedain, and probably given to the proximity, in this case, to the political position of al-Fatah, the Bologna section of the JUPS expressed its approval of the performance with an official letter that you can see there. So, I'm going to conclude. The main goal of this research, that is still ongoing, obviously, is to enhance, through a micro-history case study, the transnational dimension generated by the Palestinian question since the late 60s. This dynamic is made possible by two main elements. One side, the global dimension of the Palestinian diaspora and its international network, and the presence of a politically receptive environment such as Italy in the turn of the 60s and the 70s. The social history approach thus makes it possible to enhance the concrete experience of the Palestinian presence in Italy, a presence that was also political and physical, and to evaluate how much this influenced the theoretical elaborations and the political practices related to anti-imperialism and internationalism of Italian political movements in the second half of the 20th century. Thank you.